I'd heard the Crescent Hotel had a dark past. Dr. Norman Baker, his experimental cancer hospital. The thousands who came hoping for a cure and left in body bags. But I didn't believe in ghosts. I was here for the history, for the architecture, maybe a hint of kitschy thrill. The basement tour ended earlier than I expected. The guide pointed to rusted pipes, the crumbling brick walls, and whispered of accidents that weren't recorded anywhere. When the group left, I lingered. Something pulled me deeper into the shadows of the basement corridors, toward a small steel door I hadn't noticed before. It was slightly ajar. A cold draft escaped, carrying the scent of vinegar and something far fouler underneath. I hesitated, then pushed it open. The room beyond was cramped, lit only by a single swinging bulb. Rows of glass jars lined the shelves, murky liquid inside each. I froze. At first, I thought they were empty, but then I saw movement. Something inside twitched, long fingers or limbs pressed against the glass. I leaned closer. The jars weren't cold, they were warm, unnaturally so, like a living body beneath the liquid. The shapes shifted again, jerking violently as though struggling to escape. My stomach turned. A voice whispered behind me, "He left them for you." I spun around, empty. My heart thudded. I could feel the warmth of the jars radiating into the room, almost like they were alive. Every fiber in me screamed to run, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. One jar in particular caught my attention. It was smaller, closer to eye level. Inside was a twisted figure, half-formed, limbs tangled. A face pressed flat against the glass as if screaming silently. I pressed a finger against the jar. The surface rippled under my touch, as if it were not glass, but skin. A clatter echoed behind me, and I whipped around. The door had slammed shut on its own. Every jar vibrated slightly, a chorus of tiny, muffled cries. I backed into a corner, my hands shaking. Then I noticed a faint scribble on the floor. A circle, drawn hastily in chalk. In its center, the smallest jar rocked gently, even though nothing touched it. The whisper came again, closer. "He wants you to see them. He wants you to help." I didn't know what help meant. My chest burned as the air grew thick, humid. The jar's contents churned, as if stirred by invisible hands. A wet, sucking noise filled the room. Something cold touched my shoulder. I yelped and spun around. No one was there. The jars quivered in unison. Then I realized I was surrounded, encircled by dozens of silent, struggling forms, their pale hands brushing against the glass walls of their prisons. I ran. The door gave way just enough for me to squeeze through. My lungs burned as I bolted up the stairs, past the storage rooms and furnace, past the empty corridors, until I burst into the lobby. The warmth of the basement receded like a storm, but the scent lingered, clinging to my clothes. At the front desk, the clerk smiled politely, as if nothing had happened. I asked about the basement, about Dr. Baker's specimens. "Oh, those jars?" she said lightly. "We don't keep them anymore, just old stories." I tried to laugh, but the sound died in my throat. That night, in my room, I dreamed of glass jars, warm liquid, and little bodies pressing against invisible walls. And when I woke, my hands were sticky, my sheets damp, and I could swear I heard a faint whisper, "We're waiting." I checked into the Crescent Hotel with one request, room 218. People at the desk gave me that look, half amusement, half pity. "That's Michael's room," the clerk said softly. I acted like I didn't know the story, but of course I did. Michael was the Irish stonemason who fell to his death during construction in the 1880s. He never left. The hall leading to the room was dimmer than the rest of the hotel, the carpet worn, as though more feet paced here than anywhere else. When I opened the door, the air hit me, stale and heavy, with that strange electric bite you feel before a thunderstorm. The room itself looked ordinary. Old bed, lace curtains, antique dresser. But the ceiling, it drew my eyes immediately. Hairline cracks zigzagged across it, like scars in plaster. I laughed to myself, trying to shake the unease. All in my head, I muttered. That night, I couldn't sleep. Then, sometime after midnight, I heard it. A thud, heavy, like a body hitting the floor above me. I froze. No one was staying in the room overhead. I'd asked when I checked in. Yet the sound came again. The ceiling light trembled, swaying in small circles. The next morning, I searched the hotel's archives in the lobby. The clerk wasn't wrong. Michael had been working on the upper floors, balancing on scaffolding when he lost his footing. Locals whispered that he hadn't stopped falling, that in 218 he kept hitting the ground. Some guests said they'd seen his face in the ceiling, pressed against the plaster, as if struggling to break through. Others swore they'd woken to his body crashing onto the floor, only for it to vanish when they turned on the lights. I returned to the room with my pulse drumming. The ceiling seemed different now, like it was watching me, aware that I knew its secret. The second night was worse. I drifted into shallow sleep, only to wake to the sound of beams groaning. Dust sprinkled down, landing on my cheek. I looked up. The ceiling bulged. Indentations pushed through the plaster, broad shoulders, outstretched arms, the outline of a face straining downward. The plaster stretched thin, cracking like eggshells about to break. I couldn't breathe. The bulge deepened, then snapped. A dark figure dropped from the ceiling, hurtling straight toward me. I flinched, throwing my arms up, and he vanished, inches from impact. The bed shook beneath me. The ceiling above was whole again, though new cracks spidered out from the light fixture. I decided I'd had enough. I packed my bag and stumbled toward the door. But as I stepped, the floor creaked under my weight, not like old wood, but like something hollow. Cracks spread beneath my feet. The floor dipped. I staggered, catching myself on the dresser. For a split second, I felt nothing under me but air. I looked up and froze. In the ceiling, where Michael's face had pressed through, I saw my own. My features distorted in the plaster, mouth open in a silent scream. The floor gave way. I fell, through blackness, through air that never ended. The terror wasn't in the fall itself. It was in knowing I'd never stop falling. Because Michael hadn't, and now, neither would I. I booked a room at the Crescent Hotel, expecting charm, history, and maybe a harmless ghost story to tell back home. The building itself is beautiful. Stone walls, towering ceilings, and a view that stretches over Eureka Springs like a painting. The locals whispered that the Crescent had a darker life than it showed. They said Dr. Norman Baker, in his purple suit, promised cures he never delivered. He drained desperate patients of their hope and their money, leaving them to die. Dozens never left, and some say their ghosts still linger in the halls. The first night passed quietly, though I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. My room carried that strange hospital smell, sterile, faintly sour, like disinfectant left too long on tile. The wallpaper seemed newer than the bones of the place, but when I lay down, I could swear I heard the faint squeak of wheels, like a gurney passing just outside my door. I told myself it was imagination. Old hotels creak, walls carry sound, and my nerves were feeding me ghost stories. But in the middle of the night, I opened my eyes, and the world was wrong. The soft hotel lamp was gone. Instead, I was blinded by a glaring white light burning above me. I tried to sit up, but thick leather straps dug into my wrists and ankles. A cold metal table pressed against my spine. The air stank of alcohol and something rotten beneath it. A voice cut through the haze. Smooth, confident, almost amused. Now, don't struggle. It won't hurt a bit. Out of the brightness stepped a figure in a crisp white coat, purple tie neat against his throat. His hair slicked back, his face clean, almost theatrical. He didn't look like a doctor. He looked like a man playing dress-up. But his eyes locked on mine, and I knew this was Dr. Norman Baker. Shadows moved around him, nurses in lavender uniforms, their faces blank, blurred, as if the light itself erased their features. They wheeled trays of instruments beside me. Scalpels gleamed. Syringes stood like soldiers. Glass jars filled with cloudy liquid pulsed as if something inside shifted and pressed against the glass. "Do you know what they all had in common?" Baker asked, his tone casual, as though chatting at a dinner party. "They wanted hope. I gave it to them. And now," he leaned close. His breath was warm against my ear. "I'll give it to you." A gloved hand pressed against my chest, pinning me as he selected a syringe filled with thick yellow fluid. I thrashed against the straps, but they only cut deeper into my skin. My voice broke as I screamed, but the nurses didn't flinch. Baker smiled, calm, cold, deliberate. "Don't worry, it's perfectly safe." The needle drew closer, hovering just above the vein in my arm, when suddenly, everything went black. I woke gasping in my hotel bed, drenched in sweat. The lamp was back. The room was normal. My wrists were free. For a long time I told myself it was a dream, just a nightmare fueled by the Crescent's history, until I saw the bruises, deep, raw welts on my wrists, the exact shape of restraints. I left the Crescent that morning without checking out, but I swear, as I drove away, I caught a glimpse of the upper window. A man in a purple tie stood watching, smiling faintly, as though I was just another patient who hadn't finished treatment. Every haunting has a witness. You've just become one. Subscribe and never be alone again.